Alrighty, so with all the videos I put out, it's been a learning process. First boat I've ever done, and I have learned a lot. A lot of what I've learned is from trial and error, but also in trying to fix something that's not right to start with. And through the process, I didn't know what the problem was. So, partially I did because, when I started, I found something that was wrong. I went to have it fixed. Thought I had it fixed. I proceeded with the assembly of the hull, and it didn't go well. And at this point, I've determined that it's not really a matter of not having the skills. Even though I started with less skills than I have now, I definitely think this boat would go well for someone with my skill set if they received components that were correct. I've made that argument. I've tried to back up on that, doubted my skills, and really have a lot better understanding. So I'm going to go over on a whiteboard the dimensional issues, the geometric problems that I'm having. So bear with me. Don't normally do this kind of video. It's partially going to be showing you how Wattscraft tells you how to put the boat together. So if you're considering building one, you'll see what they tell you to do, and I'll point out some, not necessarily errors, but their instructions are a little bit confusing. It's minor stuff. You just got to pay attention. They don't go into a lot of detail. So, when you're doing what they tell you to do, what to look for, what's going on. But if you've watched my other videos, you may know that I have a twisted hull. I thought I was making progress right up until yesterday, and was willing to accept what twist I had left. Returned and found that extreme 20-25 degree temperature difference just made the whole twist really bad. And I came back to it and I was just like, this isn't going to work. It's not reasonable at this point. And the repair is not, tweak it here, cut it there, fill it there. It's kind of beyond that. And I'll show you why as best I can and try to explain that. So in their instructions, this is essentially your keel layout with your outer panels and your flat bar on end that connect these two. And this is essentially your first step. So you're laying your keel upside down on the ground, you block it up, and then you bring your outer hull plates up to this bottom edge. So you match bottom edges of your outer hull plates and your keel. And when you do that, there's a cutout in the outer hull plate that matches the front of the keel angle, this angle, when you pull it together. Now when you pull that together, and I don't know if this is normal or not, but these 2 points here, came up and were lower in the front. Now these corners right here, where the outer hull plates meet the corner of the keel, they match perfectly. These CNC cuts, they're perfect. They're great. I didn't there's no discernible gaps. It was perfect. So anyway, you got this upside down. You put these on, and well, first of all, you tack on these are ones I got were 6 inches long, about 1 inch high. Just flat bar. You're putting it on end. You're tacking it there, and and then you put your plate up to it. You match that seam right up to that corner, and you tack on this side and that side. Okay. So at that point, you have your keel whatever these are, angle-wise, setting that outer hole angle. You know, because these are your on-end flat bar, and this bottom edge is matched. You know, you have 3/8 in the U.S., 10 millimeter in other places. For a keel, you know, your outer hole plates in the U.S. are 3/16. Everywhere else, 5 millimeter. So I'd say it's half the size thickness of your keel, but you're matching the bottom edge. And these do their job. This 5 millimeter or 3/16 outer hole plate is rigid. It's surprisingly rigid. You know, and you're tacking from back to front evenly as you go. You're tacking it this direction. So you got these, you flip it over and you tack the inside. So now what I ran into, this being the rear of the of the keel, is on the left side, looking at the rear, this side in that, I don't know, 4.5, 5 inches was 3/16 out at this point, different than this angle. So the main reason I noticed that is because the transom, once you've put these on, flipped it over, you've tacked it, you're putting your transom on. That's the next step. And when you put that transom on, you know, the transom is CNC cut out to match the outer hole sections, the bent chine section right here, you know, because it comes up and then it has it flattens out. The transom matches that. So I'm looking at it and I've got something like, you know, a good 3/16 gap across here. And then at the marks that the transom sits on top of that, I had 3/8 narrower to these corners as opposed to the transom. So I thought, well, obviously the angle's not good, but the transom doesn't fit in. So kind of stopped the project for a while, and I had to quit for a couple months and cut firewood. We had a big snowstorm, tons of wood out there. I needed firewood. So I got in, I don't know, 12, 15 cord. And I thought, okay, great. You know, I got it caught up on all my mowing, all my outside work. I got 2 properties, 3 acres to mow. You know, I've got a rental needs remodeled, you know. So I get all the spring stuff pretty much caught up to where the grass is slowing down and growing and all that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a block of time, commit it to this, back off on the stuff that, you know I'm going to get behind on. And I'm going to just commit to getting this hole together. And then I could work on the mechanical and the electrical, you know, at a reasonable pace. But I wanted to be able to spend the time putting this thing together without interruption, you know, because something I've never done before, you're assembling a boat hull. You don't want to do 2 hours of this and then, you know, take a week off, come back, you know, so on and so forth. So I had this problem. I let it sit, you know, and then I finally heard wind of a industrial fab shop that's not really well advertised. That's just, I don't know, 15 miles out of town. So I called him up, he said bring it in. So I took him in the keel and I took him in the transom and showed him what the issue was. And I asked him, you know, to match these 2 sides. Now, I assumed that this is the front view of the keel, you know, that this left side, looking at the front of the keel, you know, was lower in the front as well. But without a flat spot here, it's really kind of tough to check. So I just figured, hey, you know, these guys are a pretty big shop. You know, they do some major fab work. You know, so I put my trust in them on that. You know, I just decided to, you know, just like I did other people in this process. So these angles are good now on the rear. So I decided to go ahead and start assembly. Now, I get through this, you know, the back of the keel is square. And that's something we've got to remember through this process, is the back is square. But I did quite a few videos until I finally just checked at a flat spot right about here. Checked the angles, and about in this section right there, I had 3/16 gap on this side when I set the angle on the tool for this side. So I'm like, crap. You know, I got a keel that's square in the back and is tweaked in the front. So this is essentially slightly exaggerated you know, view of the front. So looking at the front of the keel, my right side is low. So at this point I had the boat together. I had it tacked together. You know, and I guess you can watch the videos if you want to see me fight over that. But, you know, through this process I really didn't understand, you know, where the twist originated from. I was guessing it might be the keel. I checked it and then I realized, okay, it's definitely got something to do with the keel. You know, but also, you know, I knew at this point that on my side panels, you know, on the side panel of the boat, you got this and then this. Let's see, what is it? So you got, well, it's more like this and then this. So on the right side of the boat, the back was square. It was pretty flat and level like that. But the front was basically doing this. So I knew that was overbent. You know, I was basically kind of blind to it. Assuming that, you know, I'm kind of just thinking, hey, this stuff is normal. It all can't be this bad. You know, this is just part of the process, you know, because I'm ignorant and, you know, don't know any better. So, you know, the other side, the left side was overbent, but just not as bad. And that's pretty close at the front edge of that side rail, on that side panel, to what it was like. Pretty bad overbend. So also on the left side of the boat, you know, I come to find out where it matches up with the transom. This bend right here, going forward, was low in the back and high in the front. That's exaggerated, but essentially the next piece that goes on is basically cut out kind of like that, and it's a strip that goes out like this. So this angled bend like this is essentially, it sets all the geometry off. So all these little things added up caused a problem. But when I got to the point where I thought, okay, this is acceptable, I've got maybe a ½ inch left to right after tweaking and bending and prying, and then I came back and the whole thing had just twisted. I realized, no, it's not the little stuff. It's not the side, it's not this here. I mean, this contributes to pulling down the hood, you know, as you may have seen in some videos, you know, and making that corner harder to put together, and maybe even dimpling the front of the hood. But the keel is the core of the issue, and I'm going to show you why. So when you get to this step, you know, you're flipping the boat over, so the bottom's on the ground, and you're blocking up, you know, you're putting your transom on. Now in the instructions that Wattscraft puts out, you know, they tell you put the transom on, and then the rest of the pictures that they show you through the next steps don't have the transom on it, you know, but they will have the intake on the boat, and you're nowhere near doing the intake yet. So their pictures are kind of making you wonder, you know, they're kind of so in doubt, and you're like, okay, am I doing this wrong, or is this just a picture? And there is one note on there that says, you know, it's showing it at this stage, but the front's actually pulled together at that stage in the picture. And they have a little note there with the line over saying, at this stage, the front's not put together. You know, so it's like, oh, great. Thanks for telling me, because, you know, when you're going through their instructions, you're like, did I miss something? You know, and you're trying to follow the instructions. You're trying to do it the way they say, especially if it's your first time and you're not understanding the geometry of a boat and how it goes together. So anyway, so what I have is this. And as I showed you here, that keel sets the angle going out. So you get to the point where you have the transom on this section. These two are loose, but I have a bent keel, or a unevenly bent keel. The right side looking to this forward, the transom being in the back, is low. Now, you're gonna, the next step, other than blocking it up evenly, is pulling these two pieces together in the front. So what happens if this is lower than this and you block it up evenly, you know, say, let's say this is level and that's where I'm at. Okay, just going to do exaggerated here, so just for to make the point. Crap. Okay, so that's how mine's sitting. Right side's low on the front. It's square in the back. That's kind of important. So you block it up level, but this is it's set. So this is all rigid. It's not like you just bow it and bend it. It's rigid. Okay. When you go to pull these front together, you'll find out there's a lot of spring pressure. Now, when I blocked it up evenly, at this point your engine bearers are not in. You don't have any structure in the bottom of that hole. You know, you're right side up, you got your side panels on, your transom's tacking everything together in the back. My transom's square in the back. I had that fixed, but not the front. Didn't know it at the time. So when I block this up, you know, equal on all four corners, here, 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 I'm lifting this up. Now when I lift this up in the front, because that's where it's going to have to raise to block up level, what I'm doing, if this is the transom, is I'm creating this angle. So now instead of a 45 here, you know, what do I have? I've got an upward rise on this side because I had to raise this. Does that make sense? The back is square, this is low because of this keel bend. And because that piece of flat bar is setting that angle, you're not just tweaking it to where you make up for it between the front and the back on the outer hull section. It's not going to happen. And it doesn't happen. And besides that, you're going to end up putting those engine bearers in and you suck it all up level anyway. So if you did take any of that, you know, that where it was low to this side, if you blocked it up, you know, even if you could correct that, it's going to get uncorrected with your engine bearers because everything sits flat on the bottom of the hull, goes across and attaches. So what I have on my boat, on the left side of the boat, is this angle. And on the right side of the boat, I have a slight down angle. So, and the reason for that is actually the chine bends. Is this chine bend on this side, this bend here, excuse me, on this side, when I went to put the side panel on, I had this, you know, pretty even back here, you know, because you're setting the side panel on top of the edge of this outer bent chine. And, you know, you can lay it on flat, and I did, right up to here, and you're tacking it on edge to edge, inside corner. But this corner right here was overbent. And I didn't know it till after, you know, I had these two pulled together, and I was trying to match the side panel up with this panel, which is the bottom, you know, the right side outer hole panel. So I'm trying to match edges there with the side panel that goes on top of this, and I'm having to put a ton of pressure on that side panel to lift it up to match, you know. And on this side, of course, the panel's going forward is at an upward angle. That side went on like butter. I was like, wow, big difference. You know, this side I'm heaving and hoeing and just using screwdrivers and bending it up and getting the edges perfect and tacking. And on the other side, no. Well, now I know why. This side was high, this side was low. And that was all set at the keel. That was all set right here. And when I blocked it up, that's your twist. You know, this is your twist. That's my twist. You know, this is your accentuated twist in the boat. So this is what sets all these angles right here for these side panels, you know, and all that carries up to the front of the boat. You know, it's not like, you know, you magically get up to here as you're putting things together, side panels, front hull panels, they just straighten up. Now the goal is in the front. When you're coming together, you're matching these. Well, certainly you can match them, but might be off to the side. As far as the square of the boat, yeah, you're going to match them over here, you know. Might be a 1/4 inch, but believe me, when you go to put these you know, say this is your side panel, you know, it's coming forward like this, you got another piece that goes in here. So when you go to put this in, you know, one side's easier, one side's harder. The same as the outer hole panel here, you know. But you have to put them together, matching these edges. When you put this piece in, there's a little cutout right here, CNC cut, you know, and that matched in perfect. But on the left side of the boat, my side bend went like this. Okay, so I've got this piece of metal hanging out below the bend where I couldn't lift it up to match the side panel. I just couldn't. Well, that changes the length from here to here. And believe me, I did it twice. And you're matching those edges, and you have to have that right geometry for the front to come together, square and even and match in the front. You've got 2, 4, 6, 7 with the hood that have to match. Panels that come together to the tip of the hood. So, you know, this bend plus this whole thing being lower, you know, it's hard to even calculate how bad all of that is. I mean, you can see it in the end result. The last video I did, the boat, you know, when the weather changed, just poof, massively tweaked. And that's because it's under that much pressure. You got this coming up, you have to pull it down, match the seam. You have, you know, the other side pointing down, and you're having to pull it up and match the seam. And when you're pulling it up, you're tweaking out the side panels. You know, you're tweaking out the front of the bow. When you have to pull it up further and tighter on one side than the other, that panel is just going to bow down on the top. Okay, and all of this is changing your geometry. So it's to me, it's almost amazing. I mean, obviously the difference from left to right is small enough to where it could be done. and I did do it, which if anything is just a testimony to my ability to do it. Not that it's great, but I got it done. I got the front together and matching, but I had to match the twist of the boat that started at the keel. Now once you pull these two pieces together with these being twisted back here, once you pull these together, you just solidified your twist. You just set it in stone. There's a lot of tension on these. You know, every panel you put on, you're adding rigidity. You know, and of course these are 5mm. Everything up from there is 3mm, or you know, 3/16 and 1/8. So, you know, that's where my twist came from. But these keel bends are critical. I mean, anybody, if you're thinking about buying a kit, especially if it's from RSR, it's where I got this one. Okay, don't start assembling your boat until you have this keel on a flat floor and pretty level, and you have the flat section of the keel on the floor as level as possible, and you measure that thing left to right, front to back, and you want it to match. I mean, yeah, you can get away with a 1/16, maybe an 1/8, but you know, the problem is if you have you're 3/16 lower here than over here, you know, and for all I know, this side's 3/16 high, that side's 3/16 low, and that's just within, starting out, that was just within this short distance in the back. You know, this is closer to a foot. You know, you've got a lot of rise there from the center. So, you know, if I had 3/16 from here to here, different side to side, you know, and you say, okay, well that carried out here to here. Well, if I had 3/16 from here to here, what did I have from here to here? Obviously more, you know, and when you're talking about that, you know, okay, even if you're only 3/16 here, you still got the rest of that panel. You're carrying out that angle. It's set by this flat bar on end. That just keeps getting more and more off. So this drop, that drop over here, I don't know what it was, because I'd have to, you know, tear it down and figure out how to even measure that. You know, essentially relax it all, block it unevenly, because it's the angles are set unevenly. Blocking it evenly, just twist your hole from the front of your keel back to the transom. That's where the twist started. You know, so anyway, when you get a kit, you just need to check everything. You know, and when it comes to this side panel, this little thing here, okay, you can't tell me the geometry is the same here, because even when I jacked this sucker up and I leveled it out, you know, I got that left side level. It was still lower than the hood. I still had to weld out several beads, and with this level and the hood level, from the top of the you know, with the hood sitting on top of the deck, sitting on the top of the front of the boat, with all the side panels on and everything. You know, it was like an 1/8 inch. It was almost the full thickness of the metal. So, you know, that overbend, that height difference just proved the overbend. Because if this bend was perfect, you know, the height here would be right. Okay, so when they don't bend it right, first of all, you know, you really hope you don't have a screwed up bend from front to back. Because what this caused me back here is I've got a 1/4 inch gap when you're standing behind the boat looking at this corner, because this bend was low. So now that this side portion of the side panel sitting on top of the transom, flat right here,